I respect you for clicking on this video. Not only are you helping me, but you are helping yourself. You've admitted to yourself, or you know, that you are lost, you don't know where to go, you don't like the job that you're in, you don't like the relationship that you're in, you have no direction in your life, you're doing the same things over and over again. You keep gaming, you keep reverting back to gaming once you try to quit it, you keep try smoking, or stop trying to drink, and you always find yourself coming back to them old habits, them old routines, because you get to a point of progression, and you keep progressing, and then eventually you hit a stop where you just have no direction anymore. It's gone, and that's when all your progress is reverted back. And you've admitted that to yourself, and you are looking for ways to find out what you need to do, what your purpose is. And I respect that fully. Before we begin this video, I need to talk about my own purpose and how I discovered it, for you to understand the things I'm going to talk about in this video, and you'll be able to go like, oh, so that's why he was talking about that. That makes sense now. You'll get little aha moments where you'll understand, and it'll just make the video flow a lot more easily. December 2022. I and my ex-girlfriend started seeing each other again. We broke up for a little while, and then after a few months of breaking up, we came together and started talking, started messing about, seeing how things would go, see if we could keep going, and maybe we made a mistake, but that wasn't the case. And this week in December, we mutually agreed to call it off, and it was basically a waste of time, waste of both of our times. So we came to the agreement of calling it off. So naturally, this week wasn't the best of weeks. I was, pretty down, pretty emotional. All of the week I was in my head thinking about her, thinking about how we used to be, the relationship, missing her, them just kind of normal emotions that we go through. There was a emotional connection with her, because I was with her for a while before this, and that rekindling brought all them emotions back up. And it came to the end of the week, the Saturday of that week, and everyone I knew, my friends, my family, my sisters, they were all going out with their boyfriends, their friends, their girlfriends. It was a bonfire night, and a bonfire night is when we have this big fire, light loads of wood on fire, and fireworks go off. So they're just going on this little date, watching fireworks go off, cuddling each other as you do as a couple. And I'm all alone. I've just called it off with my ex, so I'm feeling extra lonely. So my initial thought was, I need to clear my head, I need to go out in nature and just be off my phone. And before we called it off, me and my ex, I said these words to her: I'm going to be alone for a long time now. As in, I'm not going to be in a relationship. I'm not going to be messing around with girls. So I knew deep down that I needed to sort my life out. I needed to sort out what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. Because I still wasn't happy with the job I was in, with the situation I was in. And now I've got more time than ever to think about that and do things about that, because I'm single. I haven't got anyone else to worry about. All I've got to worry about is myself. So I went up to this nice viewpoint where I could see fireworks from the distance, and I sat there in my car from 3 p.m. till 9 p.m. at night. I took a pillow with me, I took a blanket. I planned to stay there for quite a while. I didn't plan to stay there for 6 hours, but I planned to stay there for quite a while, because I just needed to clear my head and get my emotions out of my head. And naturally, when I first got there, like the first two hours, I would say, I was very emotional, very lonely. What started it all off was the feeling of being lonely, the feeling that everyone else was off doing something with their loved ones, and I was up here sitting on this mountain on myself, looking at the fireworks on my own. And that got my feelings going, that got my emotions going. I started crying, and I cried for quite a while, like a good half an hour of just feeling alone, like I'm always finding the same girls and then breaking up with them. I was always in this constant cycle of going for the same girls and then breaking up with them, because I just wasn't satisfied. I felt like there was more out there. There was more that I deserved, because I knew I was different. I was different to a lot of people. So I just thought, oh, these girls are just like, they're not helping me anyway. If anything, they're dragging me down, because the ones that I was with always liked going out drinking. I didn't want to go out drinking anymore. I wanted to grow up and mature and find out what I wanted to do, because I still, I wasn't happy with my job. I wasn't happy with my finances. So as time goes on, I'm calming down. My nervous system is calming down. My emotions are calming down, and I'm just becoming more relaxed and actually starting to enjoy being on my own. And I start laughing about it. I start, giggling and just making jokes that I'm on my own. I'm sitting up here while everyone else is with their girlfriends and boyfriends, and I'm just sitting there all alone. And it was great. I was telling myself it was great. I was genuinely actually happy about it. Like, I can actually sit here on my own with myself, be emotional, cry and be happy and laugh about it. And I was genuinely happy that I could do that. And as time goes on, my thinking becomes more and more positive, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be on my own for a while now. I need to think about what I've got to do. How am I going to create a business? I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, my own boss. This has been in my blood for ever since I was born. So I was just thinking of ways on how can I create a business. And it got me thinking, what are my strengths? What am I good at? And because I cried that night, I was like, I'm pretty aware of my emotions, and I can handle them quite well. I've just let myself cry. I'm calming down and laughing about it. Like, I'm good at dealing with my emotions. At this point, I already started doing journaling and meditation, not very seriously like I am now, like I do it every day, but back then it was like every so often. It wasn't up to the standard that I've got now, where I was reading a little bit, meditating, journaling. So my self-awareness was quite good, and from childhood I've always had to be quite self-aware, just because of like my surroundings. I was always aware of the things I said, the things I did would annoy my dad, annoy my mum. So I was always aware of what I was doing and what I was feeling. I was never able to show my emotions just because it would upset them and piss them off in a way. And that was just how my life was. So I was always quite good at knowing how I felt and how that was going to affect other people. So my awareness level was quite, I would say, like a good, 5 or 6 maybe. I developed it a little bit through journaling and that, and introspective work. So my mind was going, how can I create a business through self-awareness, sharing my self-awareness and developing the ability where my self-awareness is even stronger, and I develop that even further to the point I can give that information out to other people and benefit their lives, help their lives out. I was born to help other people. This was my purpose. is to help other people, men in particular, to develop their self-awareness, develop their self physically, mentally and emotionally through fitness, journaling, meditation, mindfulness. How can I do that? I said. And I remembered back in the day I was sitting on my bed with my dad, and he said to me, "What do you want to be, son?" I said, "Dad, I want to be a YouTuber, I want a game." And I said it with all this excitement, and instantly he shuts it down. You know, back in that generation, they didn't understand the internet. This was like when I was 14, 15, back in that time. I loved gaming at that point. I was like, oh my God, I want to do this. And he instantly, he just didn't look impressed. So it'd always been there. That was always something that I knew that I wanted to do. It was always in the back of my mind, I need to start a YouTube channel. And I did at one point. I started a gaming YouTube channel, this channel, but I've deleted them videos and now I've turned it into this. I put that self-awareness that I had, my strength, and I thought about YouTube, which I've always wanted to do, which I could hit millions, thousands of people easily that are alike, and I could help them. And I put them together, and this is where I'm at now, making these videos. This was my purpose. I seen a vision. It wasn't detailed. It wasn't like I knew exactly how to do it, but I knew that I needed to make videos. I needed to get on the internet and share my experiences, my things that I've took into my life, practical things that I've took into my life that's helped me. And I needed to share that with you. For a long time, I was so lost. I would get into relationships, I would break up with them, and then you would go through that stage of progress in the gym. You're like, oh, I've lost a bunch of weight. After the gym, you get jacked. I wasn't jacked, but you go to the gym, you do a bunch of exercise, you lose a bunch of weight, you try and put on some muscle, you're eating good, you maybe go out a little bit, but not that much. You get better, you're improving, you feel like you're improving a lot, and then again, you hit with that time of, where do I go now? What do I do? I still hate the job I'm in. I'm living at home on my own. I'm lonely. Like, what do I do? It was a constant cycle of that. And then during them times of like breaking up with my girlfriends, I wouldn't game as much. And then when I would hit them hard times of like, where do I go now? Then I'd start gaming again. It was a roller coaster, up and down of emotions. For a couple of months I was really high, proper dopamine was proper up there, and then all of a sudden I was crashed, depressed, didn't want to go out the house, didn't even want to walk, didn't want to make food, anything like that. My progress would instantly just go down, and I felt like I was constantly in this cycle. Until this very moment, in my car up that mountain, crying my eyes out, going from one extreme, crying, to the next of finding my purpose. That me being emotional deactivated all my emotions, let my emotions run. And I said before I was going, I'm not going on my phone, I need to clear my head. So through them 6 hours, the first 2 hours was just like pure emotions, pure anxious thoughts. And I just let it happen. I just let it happen, let it run, and let my thoughts go. And eventually the flow state started coming. The ideas, the logical thinking, what I can do next, just naturally came to me by creating that environment of being undistracted for several hours. Now, this is how I found my purpose, and you are going through your purpose right now. If you are lost, you've finished your one purpose, and you are in the stage of trying to find your next purpose. because there's layers to your purpose, and I will get into that now. A sense of purpose can only rise when we are in touch with ourselves. We have layers, and it is like an onion, just like Hamza said in his video. And if you want to watch his video, I'll link that in the description. He goes into a great detail and explains it very well on how purpose is. And we both got that from this book, The Way of the Superior Man. Now, purpose has layers. It is like an onion. The outer layers are more of the less purposeful purpose, and these come from usually what you've learned from your parents or your childhood, and it would be like subjects you've picked in school or what job you're currently doing. This is the direction that, you know, or you're in university. These are like the lesser purposeful purposes, but we need to go through these to burn them off and then have them moments of like, okay, where do I go now, to then lead us on to the next stages of our purpose. When your current purpose is starting to feel boring, this is when you have burnt through that layer. This is when the next layer should come in. And from my story, I feel like this would be the times where I quit my job to start working with my dad, and this was my new purpose, to start working with my dad. Or the times where I got rid of my PC and then I started improving myself. That was like my next part of my journey. That was my next layer of purpose. And it feels good for a little bit, but it doesn't feel good for too long, just because we don't know where we're going. Most of the time we don't know where we're going next. And when we do burn through them layers of purpose, them early stages of purpose, it'll feel good for a little bit, but not for too long, because then we're asking questions like, okay, what do I do now? This is the point that you're probably at between searching for these types of videos. You're searching for what's next. How do I find my purpose? Like, because you don't feel like you felt it, and a lot of people get stuck at the early ages of like 18 and mid 20s. Like, they just, for years, they can be lost and not know what they're doing, and that is because of the excess amount of drinking, gaming, social media. It distracts us. When we get to them times of wanting to quit our jobs because we think, okay, this part of my life's over with now, this purpose is over with now, we need to ask the men around us, am I wimping out? Am I losing steam? Or am I afraid to bring it to an end? To know if you have burnt through a layer of purpose, you'll need to ask yourself these 5 questions. Have I got an interest in this purpose that used to highly motivate me? Do you feel free from regret from starting a new purpose or finishing the old purpose? Do you feel clear-minded, confused, or unburdened, even though you don't know what to do next? Do you feel an increase in energy at the end of the purpose just finished? Do you feel silly with the same path even though it is not serving you anymore? These are the signs for you to ask yourself and recognize that this purpose has come to an end, but you need to end it without burdening other people. Say, like in a job, you just quit randomly. You can't just quit randomly. It'll be over a longer period of time. You might recognize that this stage of your purpose is over by going through this list, and you've ticked them off, and you think, okay, so this purpose is over with now, this is done for me. You might know exactly what you need to do next, and if you don't, which often is the case, then you need to be able to create an environment, just like I did, where you can spend time out in nature, out in a vast land of openness and undistracted, to be able to give yourself time to think about what you want to do next. And I say give yourself an extended period of time, like I'm saying like 4 to 8 hours between that window, because the first 2 hours, 3 hours are just going to be anxious thoughts and just natural everyday thoughts that are going to come about. And then after that will come, after you've calmed your monkey brain down, your emotions down, your anxious thoughts down, your brain will be, your nervous system, your monkey brain will be tired out at this point, and then this is when we can logically think and find the next steps. And you might not know exactly what steps to take, but you know which direction you want to go in. And don't hesitate when you do know which direction to go in. Even if you don't know exactly what to do, just go and start it, and start it by trial and error. Just figure out as you go along through trial and error on this is the right direction for you. Can you hear that? Before we start this section, there are 2 links in the description, both being ACE tests, Adverse Childhood Environment Tests. These will give you results on whether or not you have trauma and how severe. The first link will be, you will get a number from 1 to 9, 1 being little to no trauma and 9 being the worst types of trauma. The second is similar, but it just gives you more of a worded answer. Remember, trauma is what happens inside of you from the events that happened outside of you. Events can be stressful but not traumatizing, or they can be stressful and traumatizing. It depends on how sensitive and how you internalize that in yourself. 2 people can go through the same experience, the same childhood, and only one can come out traumatized. It is a psychic wound lodged in the nervous system, mind and body, triggerable at any moment. And people use this word trigger a lot, and as when we are triggered, emotions can rise, but a lot of the time people use it in the wrong way. They're saying like, that movie traumatized me. To understand the word trigger and re-traumatized, first we've got to understand the 2 types of trauma: capital T trauma and small t trauma. Capital T trauma is events happening to vulnerable people that should not happen. For example, children. And I'm not excluding any other groups of vulnerable people, but for the sake of the video, children is the easiest example. Small t trauma is a couple of things: bullying from peers, casual but harsh comments from parents, or not getting enough significant connection from the parents. They can be bad things happening to a person, or they can be good things not happening to a person, such as their emotional needs not being met, or their peers or parents accepting them. Both types of traumas can lead to disconnection of the self, families, and the world around us. Here is a checklist. I'll put it on the screen now, and you can read through these, and if these statements are true, you do not have trauma, as well as you've got them tests if you want to take them. So now, understanding all this, to be triggered is to act, think, or feel as you did in that traumatic event. Things that can trigger you is pretty much anything from seeing something done to someone else, hearing something said to you or someone else, or even feeling certain emotions. I would get triggered when I was in conflict with people, in arguments, in school, wherever it may be, just in a heated argument, a heated situation, my body would go into freeze mode. There is fight, flight, or freeze. And when you can't fight and you can't flight, when you can't run away, your last option is to freeze. I would freeze in these situations, causing me to not be able to speak, respond, because I thought I was back in my house getting slapped, getting physically abused. I thought that if I carry on with this argument, it's going to end up with this other person hitting me, and I'm going to feel just like I did back then, not being able to do anything, not being able to react. I just felt like that scared little child again. You might not think you have trauma, and I didn't, until I started to learn about them. It let me deal with the consequences that the situations that I went through affected me, how I internalized them. With learning about them, it allowed me to become aware of what it was, what I went through, how I act, how I think, how I feel. And by being aware, it allowed me to unlearn these things. I learned to not be that scared little child anymore. Them survival mechanisms that are built into us to survive them situations, the fight, flight or freeze situations that go on in our body, they help us to survive and protect us in them situations. But later in life, as in now, they don't serve us as much as we needed them back then. I couldn't escape my house, so I went into that freeze state of mind. When I tell myself I'm not good enough, I'm fat, I'm unproductive, unfocused, that is my child talking. And this, my awareness, me being aware of this, learning about this, has allowed me to understand that is my child, that is my scared self talking. I've been to many therapy sessions, and I've learned about EMDR therapy. And this therapy is very helpful for people who have gone through stressful, traumatic events. It allows you to relive them moments as you are now, and so you can move past them in a way of growth. And I also learned from this book by Gabor Mate. I've listened to his podcast, and I'll link that in the description. And this book and that podcast has helped me put this section together. And this book alone has helped me understand myself a lot more than I ever did. We cannot find purpose if we do not understand ourselves on a deeper level. We have to be able to be our authentic selves for purpose to rise. And that's why I brought trauma into a purpose video. I truly believe that if you are traumatized and you do not understand why you think certain things, act certain ways, the same situations keep repeating over and over again, that is from trauma. And if you do not understand that, if you're not aware of it, you cannot move past it until you are aware of it. We have to acknowledge it and be aware of it for us to be able to go into a direction of growth. First, I want you to take these tests, and then it'll just give you a brief understanding of if you have trauma or not, and if this section will be useful for you. And if it isn't useful to you, you're on the one end of the scale, the number one end of it, then maybe this information can be useful for people that you might know or meet. You can send this video to them, or send the book to them, send that podcast to them, and it'll help them understand. The number I got was 5, so I'm in the mid section of being fucked up. But I would recommend, after finding out if you have trauma or not, and to become more aware of it, I would recommend the cheapest option is to start journaling and reliving them moments, getting to know yourself, starting to try and remember your childhood, because I don't remember much of my childhood, and I don't know if this would be the same for you, but I don't remember much of my childhood because I lived in that constant state of freeze. And with journaling, we can start to remember, we can start to write about our childhood, we can start to reparent ourselves. Also, there is another way of reparenting ourselves, and I've done this too, and it can be very healing. I've done it a couple of times, where we would go into our room as ourselves now and see our younger self. Just play it through your mind and going upstairs into your room, and you've knocked on the door, whatever you do, you open the door and you go and speak to your younger self when he's upset, he's crying. When I was younger, I was always told to go to my room after being slapped and think about what I've done, and I would stay there for like 4 hours, 3-4 hours, just sitting on my own, crying, to deal with my own emotions. So at this point, you'll want to talk to your younger self and say things to yourself that your parents should have said, and basically reparent yourselves, and by saying, you know, everything's gonna be okay, and talking yourself through this situation. Just imagining that you are that upset little boy in that situation, and it might sound a bit cringe, but trust me, take it into practice, do it, and see how it affects you. A lot of emotion came out of me, and I just relived that moment, and this is where I started to develop my reparenting of myself, where I started to notice, okay, I'm telling myself I'm not good enough, I'm not confident. Then this is where I started to reaffirm myself and tell myself, okay, I'm confident, I'm intelligent, everything's going to be okay, you're safe. That was a major one, you're safe. And I started writing this in my journal. I started telling myself this every day. Before I knew all that and did all this, I would look for external validation of other people. I would post all the time on Instagram or Snapchat. I would look for external validation. I never validated myself until I started realizing that it's all come from my childhood. I would go and post these pics and videos of myself, or looking for, attention. But when I was more aware of it, I stopped myself. I was like, okay, no, you don't need to post that. You look good. No one needs to know where you are, all this sort of stuff. I just talked myself through it and basically reparented myself. And I press you now to, after this video, to go and watch that podcast. And the podcast is called The Root Cause of Trauma and Why You Feel Lost in Life, with Dr. Gabor Mate, the author of this book. This is going to be very helpful for you to understand trauma a lot more, for you to give that information to someone you know or just yourself. After this video, go and watch that. We have to create an environment for ourselves that allows us to think clearly. How do we do this? We start hiking, we start finding our favourite places in nature, and we spend extended periods of time undistracted from the outside world of like social media. We do not go on our phones. This will allow us to think a lot more clearly because we haven't got them distractions. We don't want to be playing music, we don't want to be going on our phone. We need to keep creating this environment to find our purpose. The reason I say that it needs to be undistracted and for an extended period of time, because this is uncomfortable, and I'm not gonna lie to you. It's uncomfortable to sit there for 4 hours, 5, even 2 hours. It's uncomfortable because them very first 2 hours are the most uncomfortable hours that you'll probably ever go through. You feel bored, your anxious thoughts are coming up, you've got nowhere to run from your emotions. Like, it is uncomfortable to be in. And we need to be uncomfortable for growth. We need to be vulnerable for growth. We will not grow without vulnerability. And this is what these situations bring in. It forces us to figure out our life. It forces us to sit ourselves down, deal with what is happening currently in our life, and then figure out where to go from there. The reason you are stuck and have been in this situation of not knowing what to do for so long is because you've been distracted. We need to get past them 2-3 hours of uncomfortable thoughts for then our monkey brain to rest and be tired and just deactivate, our nervous system to just deactivate, so then we can move forward into this flow state of mind, this logical thinking mind. And once you hit that flow state, that logical thinking of mind, and you might not think you can do it because you're that emotional. The more emotional you are, the more you need to do this. Because you've been running from your emotions, your situations, your job, your girlfriend, whatever it is, them hard, difficult conversations, them hard feelings that you are running from. This is the situation, this environment that you need to be creating for you to find your purpose, for you to find direction finally in your life. And it speaks about this in the way of the superior man. You need to be able to create an environment undistracted, free of any distractions, out in nature, in an open area where you can just sit and think. And I did it without even reading this book. I recently got this book. I hadn't had this book at this point. I bought this book about 2 weeks ago. And this was December last year I figured out my purpose. So I created this environment because I liked being out in nature, I liked hiking, I liked walking. And I knew that situation, that environment would clear my mind instantly. I've been up there before and I knew how deserted it was. Like no one goes up there. It was so clear. There was just nothing but like a little bit of wind. Like it was so silent up there. My mind adapted to that silentness. My mind became silent in a way. Like it was just so clear, if you get what I'm trying to say. The environment allowed me to think clearly, and we need to be able to create this environment to find our purpose. And you might not find it the first time, you might not know where you want to go the first time, but you need to keep creating these undistracted, where we're not gaming, we're not on social media, we're not drinking, and we're definitely not looking for women to be with. We do not want to be around women. We do not want to be out drinking to find women. We want to be on ourselves, creating this environment to find out where we need to go. This gets addictive. That flow state of mind, that state of being, of pushing yourself to that point of like uncomfortable point of feeling anxious and bored and lonely. Once you're past them emotions, that flow state of mind comes, and them thoughts just come to you like they've never come to you before. It flows easily, and you think of things that you've never thought you could even think of before. It gets really addictive, and that's why I stayed up there for that 6 hours. 6 hours of just constantly staring out into the open land that was around me. That open area allowed me to think like that. It allowed me to create that flow state. It got so addictive, I didn't want to come out of it. I was like, I checked my phone like halfway through, like 3 hours in, and this was just the point of like where I started to feel good. And I checked my phone and I was like, oh, it's only 6 o'clock. I don't want to stop yet. And it's a good job that I didn't stop, because I wouldn't have found my purpose. Them 6 hours, I think it was like the 5 hour mark where I found my purpose. I stayed there for another hour because I wanted to see how much more I could get out of myself, how much more I could take from this flow state, how my thinking. I didn't want to get out of that state. It was addictive. It was so peaceful in my mind. I was never in a state of peace in my life than that moment. That moment was the most peaceful and clear-headed I've ever felt in my life. And that's why this whole purpose of recording these videos came to me. because my mind was so clear, because I created that environment. We have to be okay with being alone. You might be a lone wolf, but you're probably distracting yourself with gaming and social media. Even if you do go on hikes, you're probably with other people. You're probably going on your phone as well. We need to be on our own, undistracted. We need to cultivate mindfulness and self-awareness through journaling, meditation, and just self-introspection. These can help you connect with yourself, understand yourself, be vulnerable with yourself, be authentic with yourself, for you to gain clarity on your purpose. Like I mentioned earlier, self-awareness was always my strong point. This was always something that I was good at, but now I've further developed that through these practices, through writing in my journal, through meditation, becoming more aware. When we write in our journal, we want to be writing, if you don't know your boundaries, like what pisses you off and what you like, what you want in a woman, what you want in a job. Developing your self-beliefs and working with your inner child. All these things that I have had to work on to understand myself more on a deeper level, to understand the things that annoy me, the things that, why I do them. It's allowed me to develop my personality, my authenticity. It's allowed me to laugh at myself and be okay with fucking up and saying things wrong and taking risks, because I understand myself. Oh, I'm not very good at this, so I'm gonna try and improve in this area. But it's okay if I fuck up, because I know I'm not very good at it right now, but I know if I just stay consistent, I stay disciplined, I keep doing it, I will get there. And just with this level of understanding, you start to understand your strengths and weaknesses and your unconscious habits. And through my writing, like even the way, like I read back on the things that I wrote, and my unconscious thoughts and behaviours come out in just my writing sometimes. And that's where meditation comes in. Meditation allows us to become more aware of our unconscious thinking, unconscious acting. Fucking hell, I can't speak right now. Our unconscious behaviours, our habits, our emotions. Like even our emotions are unconscious sometimes. Meditation allows us to become more aware of that. And through being aware, that then allows us to write in our journal, say to ourselves, okay, I'm aware of this now, I'm aware why I think like that, why these situations keep coming up again and again, and I keep being in the same cycle over and over again. I'm more aware of that now, so now I can change it. What are the next steps for me to start being more confident? When I'm in conversation, I stutter a lot. When I'm in conversation, I can't think what to say. So I'm aware of that now. Now I can say, okay, how do I take this further? How do I improve on this area? Okay, I can read Win Friends and Influence People, the book, Win Friends and Influence People. This book is very good for wanting to speak to people, wanting to learn how to motivate people and make people your friends. Just by being aware, it allows us to move in a direction, and then we're not in this constant state of, okay, where do I go next? We sort of know where we want to go next. We start developing our personality, our weaknesses, our strengths even further, just by being aware. And using meditation and journaling together, pairing them together, to be aware with meditation and then to journal it and write down, okay, I need to do this next, I need to do this next. how do I do this, all that sort of stuff. And it just gets our thinking a lot more clear just by writing it down. And these two paired together allowed me to develop my self-beliefs, my unconscious acts in a different way to better suit me for my purpose, to develop my personality, to speak better, to make these hand gestures that are gonna keep your attention, develop my up and down of my voice, because it's not just like this monotone. So I was just more aware of that, and it allowed me to develop that. And that's what I'm saying, you need to become more aware so you can understand yourself more, to be more authentic, and then change yourself to improve in that direction, to understand. And that leads me on to my next section, your strengths and weaknesses. You need to be able to understand yourself on all levels: emotional, physical, your mind, your body, your triggers, what makes your listening switch on. Like, there could have been a couple of times during this video where you were proper like, whoa, what's he saying? Like, you were proper listening to what I was saying because it hit you. Your listening just switched on. You got to be able to know them things and what your strengths and weaknesses are. Without knowing what we're good at, what we're bad at, how can we move in a direction of what our purpose is if we don't know our strengths and weaknesses? We need to know our strengths and weaknesses so we can further develop them. But the thing that people make the most mistake is developing first their weaknesses, because they're like, okay, I'm good at this, so I just don't need to think about them, but let's focus on the weaknesses. But when we do that, it demotivates us. It demotivates us. Because when we start to develop our weaknesses, which, like, for me, for a long time I did, and when we get to that stage of, like, we hit a fail, and it's not really a fail, it's just a lesson that we need to learn to further develop ourselves, further develop that weakness, it demotivates us and stops the momentum going. So like I did, I recognized my strength, my awareness, and I paired that with my weakness, that was speaking to people. I couldn't be authentic and vulnerable with people, and through these videos further on, if you look back to my previous videos, you will see they're more cut. Like, you won't see the times where I fuck up like I just did when I'm speaking. You won't see them sort of moments in that video, because I just wanted it to be perfect. I didn't want people to laugh at me. I wasn't confident enough to do it. But I further developed that because that was my weakness, and I paired my strength, which was my awareness, what I knew a lot about, my emotions, how I think and stuff like this. The things that I talk about in the videos are like things I know, but you didn't get that authenticity behind it because that's still further developing, and it still is developing. It is still my weak point, I would say. Like, I can't always be vulnerable and authentic sometimes. But by pairing it with your weaknesses and your strengths together, it allows that momentum to keep going. Because when you are hit with them fails of your weaknesses where you need to learn from, the strength comes in of like, okay, but I actually got stronger in my strength. Like, my awareness is better now, even though I can't be vulnerable and authentic. Oh, but my awareness is better now. Like, just developing it's got better, and that keeps it going. It keeps it rolling, keeps the momentum going, keeps the ball rolling. If you are stuck with understanding your strengths and weaknesses, there is a link in the description that is a personality test, and they give you generic, really, strengths and weaknesses, but it is pretty accurate in what it is saying, what strengths and weaknesses you've got. And you might not have them at the minute, but as you further develop, you will develop these strengths and weaknesses. And it's just sort of really to give you a bit of an idea of what you are good at, and you might read some of them and you'll be like, oh yeah, I do that. That is my strength. So it's just a little way to, like, maybe get you going on knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, because you might not know exactly like I did. I knew I was more aware, and it didn't say it in this personality test. I took my own before this video, and it didn't say anything about being aware. So it could just give you an idea of which direction you want to go in. If you are looking for more of this defined, personalized strengths and weaknesses, like I said, you'll want to spend time alone. You'll want to spend time understanding yourself, developing your awareness through journaling, meditation, spending time with yourself, taking yourself out for food, doing activities that you like, just spending time doing things that you like, you enjoy, and writing about them, reading about them, and it will just further develop your understanding of yourself, which will in turn bring you with these strengths and weaknesses, your own personal strengths and weaknesses. This whole video is based on being authentic. When you are not authentic, you do not know yourself. You do not know or understand yourself on a deeper level. You do not know what you like, what you dislike. By being able to understand your traumas and the things you like, the things that you're good at, the job that you want, the woman that you want, it allows us to create a business that's personalized. And when it's personalized, it's more meaningful, and people see that, and it comes out in your work. It comes out, and that's how it makes the business more successful, because it comes from own personal experiences, your own authentic experiences. It allows people to connect with you on a more deeper level. They will be more willing to give you their money if it's more authentic, more personalized to you. And we cannot do that if we are not authentic. If we are just following the same steps as someone else, as living the same life and trying to copy everyone else that's on social media, of course that business is going to fail, because it's the same thing that everyone else is doing. It's not personalized in any way. The whole journey of creating a business for ourselves is to feel free, not free of as in like being our own boss, but spiritually free, emotionally free, physically free. We want freedom as a man. We create freedom as a man. As a masculine man, we want freedom. We must live on the edge of fear, take risks to live to our full potential. If we do not, we are not living truly authentically. In return, we cannot find our true purpose. We go about our lives living our parents' dreams, our peers' dreams. Your phones, the things you read, the things you watch are all a distraction from discovering who you really are. At your core, deep down, you know what you want to do, but you're putting it off because you're scared of what people are going to think about you on social media, and what your parents are going to think about you. Forget about all that. You are living their life otherwise. You are letting other people take charge of your life. You are in charge. All you need to do, and this is where it begins, is change the way you think. When we change the way we think, we change how we feel and how we act. Start changing how you think, you will change how you think about the world, how you see others, situations, your success, your failures. You will keep living the same life and repeat the same cycle over and over again until you change your way of thinking. Do you get the same weeks, months, or years? Like when the 1st of January comes, you're like, oh, I'm going to start dieting on the 1st of January. You've already failed at that point. You need to start before the 1st of January. Because a few months down the line, you realise, not even a few months, like maybe a month, maybe a couple of weeks, them cravings hit, them hard times hit of when you're starting to go to the gym, you're starting to go dieting as well, you're doing a lot of work, you're losing a bit of weight, but then you're hit with them hard times and you revert back to them old ways because of your way of thinking. You're telling yourself, okay, maybe I'm not meant to be fit. It's because of your way of thinking. You keep living the same life over and over again because you're scared of being judged. Change the way you think and the rest falls into place. If your mate is saying, oh, I'm a bit tired today, I don't want to go to the gym, you're saying, I feel the most alive I've ever felt, I'm definitely going to the gym today. It all begins in here. Get to know yourself, be alone, create that environment of undivided thinking of 4 to 8 hours. Develop more self-awareness through journaling and meditation. Know your strengths, your weaknesses. Start off by growing your strengths and trying to pair that with your weaknesses to keep the momentum going. And finally, live authentically. Do what needs to be done, not what you feel like doing. Do what needs to be done, not what you do what needs to be done, not what you feel like doing.